And we're back here on WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the May 14th, 2022 edition of Talking Smack, reviewing Friday's Smackdown, which I already did in audio form in full yesterday here on the channel. If you haven't already checked it out, please do so. I thought Smackdown on Friday, in a nutshell, was slightly better than it has been lately, which is not saying much, because Friday's show was far from great, far from a must-see show. But with two title matches and SmackDown just not being as egregiously bad as it has been in many months, and it has been in recent months, I'll take the good wherever I can take it. So the show was fine, far from a great show, a bit better than usual, and slightly newsworthy with there being, like I said, two title matches. We had, once again, Scott Stanford filling in for Jackie Redmond on the show. Redmond's still off doing the Stanley Cup stuff, so I don't know when she'll be back. I'm not complaining. I personally enjoy Stanford more than Redmond anyway in the host role on these shows. But we had Scott Stanford, Matt Camp in the studio. JBL is the analyst, as the special guest analyst on this episode. They start off the show by running down the biggest headlines from SmackDown on Friday. Also mentioning, which I did not know, and maybe they mentioned this during SmackDown, and I just missed it. Drew McIntyre was not on the show due to doing media right now. He's in the UK at the moment promoting the Clash of the Castle pay-per-view for later on in the year. So he's doing a big promotional tour over in the UK at the moment. That's why he wasn't on SmackDown. I just thought he wasn't on the show because they didn't have anything for him. So that answers that question. They then recap Riddle versus Sami Zayn, which opened up SmackDown from an in-ring standpoint. Very good match. We hear from Sami Zayn backstage here on Talking Smack with Megan Morant. He actually thanks Megan, who had brought up the fact that Megan probably jokingly commented on the fact that Zayn was brave for going out there and confronting RK Bro and then whatever. So he thanks her for acknowledging his bravery and calls himself a leader. He's not a brown noser as other people claim him to be. He is a leader. And when you disrespect the bloodline, and by the way, when he's saying all of this, he is wearing a bloodline t-shirt, which is great. He says when you disrespect the bloodline, you're disrespecting Sami Zayn. And he did what no one else would in standing up to RK Bro at the beginning of the show, which was great. Sami Zayn is a fucking gem. That alone made this episode of Talking Smack worthwhile to me. Back in the studio, they recap the closing segment that saw, speaking of RK Bro interact and encounter the Bloodline, setting up next week's tag team title unification match. We then hear from JBL, who roasts Matt Camp for what he's wearing, looking like he's wearing a fucking Varsity Letterman jacket, which he's not wrong about. Not the fact that he's wearing it, but what he's wearing is will look like a Varsity Letterman jacket. Anyway, so JBL picks the Usos to win next week, that tag team title unification match on SmackDown, which I personally think is ending in a non-finish. I don't think we're getting a decisive pair of winners on that show. We are not getting unified tag team champions. In my opinion, and I could be wrong, but just from the general gist of what I gather from what we saw on Friday, we are not getting a decisive pair of winners to that match next Friday on SmackDown. So anyway, JBL praises the growth of the Usos, having seen their evolution firsthand in WWE. He was on commentary from 2012 to 2017, so he was really there for like the prime. And the Usos are still great now, obviously, but he was really there for the prime growth evolution years of the Usos. So he's as big of an Usos fan as anyone else. Matt Camp brings up the fact that the Usos have now been champions for over 300 days, SmackDown Tag Team Champions, which is really impressive. The reign it's been a very good reign, but when you don't have a lot of competition, maybe it doesn't mean as much. But he also says that they got to be the favorites going into the match. RK Bro is great. He praises the recent role they've been on with Riddle knocking off the Usos and now Sami Zayn in singles competition on SmackDown. But the Usos are the more, not even cohesive team, but more a successful team. And it's hard to bet against the Usos is what he's saying there. As they move on and promote Clash of the Castle for some random reason, Scott Stanford brings up a quote from JBL from like 05-04 when he was still WWE champion, about what JBL said about England. Not praising the country, but rather shitting on England and saying that, I'm not a fan of going to the country, blah, blah, blah. And then JBL doubles down on it. When Scott Stanford asks for his thoughts on the quote, if he still feels that way, JBL has this great... I'm not a big JBL fan, but he has a great line here about like, the country is great. If they could just get all the English people out of it, the country would be that much better. So I thought that was a great line. He thinks that Clash of the Castle is going to be as big as SummerSlam 1992. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is the first major WWE pay-per-view over there since SummerSlam 1992. Now, I know there was One Night Only and Insurrection and shows like that, but seriously, on a bigger scale, the biggest show in that country, in the UK for WWE, since SummerSlam 30 years ago, which is crazy. He then recaps, or they then recap in the studio, Kofi Kingston losing to Butch beating Kofi Kingston, as well as Happy Corbin attacking Madcap Moss pretty viciously, too. We hear backstage from Happy Corbin with Megan Morant, and Megan announces here, I don't think this was said on SmackDown, but Moss suffered a cervical contusion, whatever the fuck that means. I would assume that's a neck issue, but I could be wrong on that. Corbin's laughing it off, and he basically says here he'll do whatever it takes, whatever he needs to do to be happy. And that's why he did what he did in explaining his actions here on Talking Smack. So that was that. Obviously, the feud's not over. And they made a comment here, Matt Campton, not Cap, but Camp rather, about the fact that, he has to learn from this, Madcap does, and teases we may never see him again, which is complete bullshit, obviously. And he says that he has to overcome adversity for the first time in his career. And he also says, as they said on SmackDown, that the win over Corbin at the pay-per-view was the biggest win of his career to date, which is not that the Battle Royal meant anything anyway, but the man was literally a month removed, was Madcap, from winning the fucking Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal trophy. If beating Corbin means more than winning that Battle Royal, which isn't saying much, that is comical to me. It's not maybe necessarily wrong, but it is funny. Anyway, the interesting comment that Camp made here was the fact that he says, if he can overcome this adversity, then we will really learn what kind of character he has. And now I know he didn't mean that literally, but I would love if that was done intentionally as a way to kind of tease Madcap coming back with a different gimmick whenever he is back, whether it be next week or in 2 weeks or whatever, a month. And when Madcap comes back, he has a new character, and he's not Madcap anymore, no more jokey shit, and we can actually take him seriously. Because as I've said here before and in other places, it's going to be impossible for anyone to take that man seriously as long as he has that dumb name attached to him and the dumb gimmick. So please ditch that so we can move on. Anyway, they recap Sasha Banks and Naomi beating Natalya and Shayna Baszler to retain the WWE Women's Tag Team titles before also recapping Ronda Rousey beating Raquel. I wrote down Gonzalez here, but it is Rodriguez, obviously. Beating Raquel Rodriguez, a lot of R's there, to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship. We hear backstage from Raquel real quickly with Megan Morant, and Raquel says that, she wanted to seize that opportunity. She's feeling proud after that performance, and she will make her history. And she was all smiles during this entire thing, which I know she's happy to be there. She's from what I can understand, a genuinely nice person, and that's great. But they gotta, and it's not even her fault, I would assume, because we've heard this from various other people in WWE when you're a babyface, specifically the women for some really weird reason, that Vince is like obsessed with his babyface females smiling all the time. But JBL says that during that match with Ronda, that she made a statement in that matchup, and that, Matt Camp also says that she sent the message that you don't want to mess with Raquel Rodriguez. And they also bring up the fact he mentions that she may have been a little too happy with the loss. She proved she was a force to be reckoned with, and JBL also agrees, saying that, listen, she could have shown more disdain with the loss, and he expects more stars to be made, I guess, in Ronda Rousey's open challenge. Now, I don't know if that's going to be a regular thing. I would hope not, but I don't know that for a fact. He made it sound like we're going to be seeing it every week, and maybe Ronda alluded to that on SmackDown on Friday. I don't remember that personally. I didn't hear that part. I would hope that it would only be brought back as like an every month thing, like the show after a pay-per-view, which is what she's done before. I think that's great. Doing it every week, she's going to run through that division real damn quick, if that's the plan. And, I thought it was a good match, though. I don't know how many stars are actually going to be made in that open challenge, because really it's all about the aftermath, less so than the open challenge itself. But we'll see. I thought it was a good gimmick for 1 week. And again, he also kind of compares it to John Cena's open challenge from 7 years ago. I wouldn't go that far. It's only been 1 week, and Cena's open challenge for the 4 or 5 months that it lasted for, not even maybe like 3 or 4 months, was great. That was the best part of Raw in 2015. And I don't think we're going to get anything remotely similar to that from Ronda Rousey, but it's a nice comparison to make anyway, I guess. And they close out the show by hyping up what's on tap for next week, including Bobby Lashley versus Omos inside a steel cage on Raw, and then on SmackDown, RK Bro and the Usos battling for tag team title unification, which Again, I do not expect a clean finish for her. I think it's just going to end in a DQ or a count out, and that's how they end the match. And we don't get unified tag team champions. Because why else would you do it on SmackDown and not on fucking pay-per-view? That's a pretty big match. But anyway, that was Talking Smack in a nutshell for May 14th, 2022. A slightly better show than usual. Like I said, seeing Scott Stanford back on the show was nice. The Sami Zayn interview was great. Happy Corbin was what it was. And Raquel's interview was also fine, but they got to tone down the smiley aspect of her character. So that was Talking Smack for May 14th, 2022. Thank you guys, as always, for checking in my thoughts here on the show, my review of the show here on the channel. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And also be sure to hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have a great rest of your weekend, folks. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.